Hey, what is up? Today we're going to talk about the one thing that motivates people more than anything else on the planet. Because often I talk to people about motivation, inspiration, what keeps you going. But in all honesty, it breaks down super simple. So I'm going to share this little tip, little trick with you, and you're going to start recognizing it in your life, and it's going to make sense in how you motivate people to do things around you. Okay? So every single decision that you make is motivated by either pain or pleasure. Every single decision that human people make, is motivated by pain or pleasure. You decide based on if what you are going to do will bring you pleasure or you're going to avoid pain. So I'm going to give you an example. Why do you brush your teeth? Nobody gets up and holds a gun to your head every day. Why do you get up and brush your teeth? Because you know if you don't, you're going to get cavities and you're going to lose your teeth, which is going to make it very difficult to eat, which, by the way, you might die if you can't eat, right? So why do you brush your teeth? Why do you go to the gym? Well, maybe you go to the gym to stay healthy, for mobility. Maybe because your doctor told you that you had to lose some weight because it's affecting your heart or your health, chronic illness, chronic pain, chronic fatigue, diabetes, right? We all know that exercise is what keeps us going and gives us energy. So why do you go to the gym? To avoid pain, to avoid maybe it's public shame if obesity is something that you struggle with. But people will do way more to avoid pain than they will to gain pleasure. Okay. And a lot of the times that's short term. So people will do something to get rid of short-term pain instead of gain short-term pleasure. Okay. Think of it this way. If you were standing in front of a box of money, a suitcase full of money, and it's right in front of you, and 30 feet away, there is a tiger running straight at you, what are you going to do? You're going to run, right? You're totally going to run. You're not going to sit and wait. Like, the pleasure, all that money in that suitcase would bring you a lot of pleasure, but you're going to avoid the pain because that is a bigger motivator to you than it is to take the money. Now, what's crazy is that emotion trumps logic when you're actually thinking about pain. So why do we stay in those relationships that don't serve us for so long? Why do we do that? When we know that we need to get out of them, when we know that we're dating a narcissist, when we know that that person isn't meant for us, well, we are avoiding the pain of the breakup. And we think that if we continue down this path, we'll find little bits of pleasure that will keep us there, right? Or why on earth would you eat chips and ice cream when you're on a diet? Well, because our emotions dictate how we feel about those things. Sometimes that addiction, those sugar and unhealthy addictions, are because of generational and genes, right? Like generational habits and genes. And so maybe we're an emotional eater. Maybe we go to those things knowing that we're upset about something and we eat food, right? So even though we know it's detrimental to our health, whether it's physical or emotional, right? Whether we know that this is not working in our favor, eating terribly and gaining weight, because we know that it's going to affect our health in a bad way. By the way, did you know that obesity is the number one cause of preventable death in North America? Just saying, right? We got to figure out how to eat healthy. We got to figure out how to do this. Anyways, and then on top of emotion, when you're making decisions, survival comes into place, okay? Because what happens when those bad relationships that we're not supposed to be in, we know we're not supposed to be in them, but we're avoiding the pain of the breakup, turn abusive? We get out, right? It might take us a little bit of time, but we get out. What if you continue to feed your emotions with food, and you continue to eat things, processed food and ice cream and sugar and carbs and things that you know aren't fueling a good health? Because, by the way, everything that you put in your mouth, you are either fueling a good health or you're fueling a sickness. So we know that these things are all terrible, but survival comes down. So maybe we don't go to the gym. We know we're gaining weight. We don't do any exercise. We don't take our healthy eating habits into consideration until our doctor's like, hey, you're borderlining type 2 diabetes. you are gaining weight, you are having fatigue, your energy is drained, your hormones are out of whack, your cortisol is out of whack. By the way, if you struggle with weight gain, it's because usually hormonal stuff is going on. If all the other things are in check, it's usually hormonal. So we get to this point that we have to do something, and it's survival when a doctor tells us to do these things, right? So it's always a pain motivator, because pleasure we can give or take, but we'll always do things to avoid pain. So how does this relate to marketing? Let's talk about that for a second, okay? It's so much more effective to talk to people about their problems because you're going to relate to them, you're going to connect with them. You know, I talk to moms all the time about how exhausted they are. Gosh, so draining, especially having a toddler, you know, it can be so exhausting. So I talk about the fatigue. I talk about the brain fog and not being able to finish a sentence. I talk about not getting all the stuff on my list done. I talk about financial struggles that people can go through when you have a family and you're trying to struggle being a good mom or a good dad, a good parent with a financial stability for your family, and you feel like you have to sacrifice one for the other, right? We're totally motivated by pain. Yes, we'll buy something nice like a car. It might make us happy for a couple of minutes, but if it came a time where our financial stresses were so large that the stress of having that car, the pain point of having that car because we couldn't afford it, got to be too much, we would sell the car, right? So it's not about being motivated by pleasure. It's almost always being motivated by pain. So when you're in marketing, you talk about all the things that are wrong, all the pain points that people that are going to use your product or service, you're going to talk about all the pain points that they are facing. Maybe it's financial stability. Maybe they've lost a job. Maybe it is a strain on the relationship that they are living paycheck to paycheck. That's a huge one. You know, one of the reasons that I work so hard is because I want financial freedom. I want to be able to go around the world, go on a trip. I want to be able to buy whatever I want and not have to check my bank account or have a conversation with my husband because I don't want money to ever be an issue. By the way, we will have conversations about big purchases, but I just think it's so important that you understand what motivates you. And the pain of my parents being divorced and fighting over money, the pain of knowing I went without on things that I really wanted because my family didn't have money, and not understanding that there's nothing I could do about that until I was of a space that I could make money and buy my own things. It's so important that you understand it's the pain that drives you through. It's the pain that allows you to create the pleasure, right? Like it allows you the time, effort, and space to move forward and not have that pain anymore. You get what I'm putting down? So it's way more effective to talk about people's problems. And people, by the way, will talk about their problems all day, right? We've all had that friend that's gone on and on and on about their problems, but you're like, hey, here's a solution. And they don't really go after it. They're just like, oh yeah, I don't really want to do that. They'd rather talk about their problems, right? But when you can actually put in a solution and solve their problems after you've talked to their problems, you're going to have a way better result than if you always talk about your solution, talk about all the positive benefits, talk about what's wrong first, right? So you're going to notice this. You're going to notice this in your relationships. You're going to notice this in your family. You're going to notice this when you make decisions and you're like, why did I make that decision? Well, your pain point was higher than your point of pleasure, or you wanted to avoid pain, right? And create pleasure. So I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but once you understand this concept and this perspective, it'll shift and change how you speak to people and how you connect with them. And once you know how to connect with them through their pain, they'll trust you with your solution. Does that make sense? Hope you have an amazing, amazing day. I hope this hit home for somebody because I know somebody needs to hear it because they've been getting zero results in having conversations with people just about the solution. So start talking about the problem. Have an awesome day. Bye.